This episode contains discussion of murder by suffocation, strangulation, rape, torture, and suicide. Listener discretion is advised.
Larissa Dumansky and Piper Streyle were young mothers carving out their place in the world when they were taken too soon by a sexual sadist in the 90s in South Dakota. Both women were abducted, raped, tortured, and killed by Robert Leroy Anderson, the Duct Tape Killer.
Yikes.
Fun fact, I've learned after researching this that I've basically only ever said the words duct tape. I've never typed the words duct tape. And
no, it was duck. Duct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I knew it, but whenever I was like duck, and they were like, "Do you mean duct tape?" Okay, yes, I do. Yes, I really do.
No, I mean duct tape.
No, felt like a real cue hole.
Sure, you looked like one.
Oh yeah.
Google filed that away under little cue hole.
Exactly.
It's a little. What's that movie called?
Sasquatch Gang.
Sasquatch Gang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is.
All right, you guys, we haven't done a two-parter in quite some time.
It's true.
Miss it. Yeah, so this is going to be a two-parter. This is a larger case, so we're going to break it into the two pieces there. And as always, if you want them back to back, like this together, then if you're a patron, you get the second one immediately. If you're cool to wait a week in between, like that's totally fine. And you don't have to be a patron, and then you'll just get it next week. So
no biggie at all.
Exactly. But with that, we do also want to say a hey girl thanks to Caitlin P. Johnson for requesting this case.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to Beth for writing it up.
Mm-hmm. And you know, when Beth writes our script, she gives us a window open scale. And if you haven't been here before, we like to let you know how much you're going to have to open your windows because of the anger and all of the things you're going to have to throw out the window. Sometimes you throw yourself out the window. Sometimes you throw your stuff out the window. We just never know. Today, though, you need Miley Cyrus, and that's wrecking ball status.
Yes. Fully torqued.
Fully torqued. So we warned you. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Larissa Dumansky. She was born in Kiev, Ukraine, and I'm going to really try with this last name. Okay. Larissa Yorofeyev, I think. But she was born on April 28th, 1965 to Nadezhda and Ivan Yeforev. I forgot how I said it. Yorofeyev.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. She had 3 brothers named Vladimir, Sergei, and Oleg, and 7 sisters. Vera, Lyubov, Lilia, Olga, Natalia, Anna, and Tatiana. I'm sure they're all beautiful names and I'm butchering them. I'm so sorry. She graduated from Kiev High School, number 72. Do they just number their schools, I guess?
Apparently. I don't know.
That's one way to do it. Yeah, that's interesting. And then from Fashion Design School in 1985, and she married her husband, Bill Dumansky, on August 24th, 1986 in Khmelnytsky, Ukraine?
Sure.
My Tennessee is showing. I'm so sorry. The couple immigrated to the United States in October of 1990 to escape religious persecution. They had 2 daughters named Christina and Regina. So Larissa and Bill settled in Sioux Falls, South Dakota upon arriving in the United States. The population of Sioux Falls at the time was less than 100,000 people and became nationally ranked as the best city to live in the U.S. based on several factors, including healthcare, employment, home cost, and you guessed it, low crime rates. And I mean, really, like, we've done so many of these that it's just like, it doesn't matter how safe a city is. First of all, at least one person in your city is dirty brown water trash, right? Like, at least one.
Right.
Yeah, but serial killers live everywhere.
Yes.
I'm not saying that everywhere is full of serial killers, but I guess being a serial killer is like, it doesn't discriminate as far as cities go.
Well, and I'm also, the thing that comes to mind here with how Sioux Falls was described, or maybe is still described, it's kind of like the Dennis the Menace thing, where it's like, we don't have robbers in our town, and then in walks Christopher Lloyd in his nasty hair and yucky teeth.
Apple. Yeah, exactly. You never know. After settling in, both Larissa and Bill got jobs working for the John Morrell & Co. meat packing plant. That feels like a mouthful, and I'm not really sure why. Bill eventually found different work, but Larissa stayed at Morrell's working the night shift from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. They were also both members of the First Assembly of God Church in Sioux Falls, and they seemed to be really happy.
It's so sad. On August 27th, 1994, Bill woke up and noticed that Larissa hadn't turned off the alarm like she normally did each morning. He got up, he searched the house, but he couldn't find her. He went to check if her minivan was there, but it was gone. Bill got dressed, he made several phone calls to friends and coworkers, but no one had seen her. He also called 2 different ERs, but did not have any luck there, so he got in his car and drove around in hopes of finding her. He knew that she had made it to work the day before because she had called him on her break to confirm the menu for the following night's dinner because they were going to have guests over. By 7:30 a.m., Bill was in the parking lot of Morrell's driving through the lot. He found her minivan and felt immediate relief seeing it. He pulled up behind it, he parked, and then noticed that the tire on the front driver's side was flat, and he noticed the keys dangling from the driver door, so that's when he calls the police. When the police got there, detectives were concerned, but operating from the standpoint that Larissa could be with a friend or a relative.
Yeah, because she's a grown-up. She can do whatever she wants.
And it's normal for her to be like, hang on, I'm not going to take my keys with me. That'd be silly. I'll just leave them in the door, and then we can head out to wherever we're going, right?
This doesn't scream got interrupted getting into her car unexpectedly. Also, this is 1994, and her alarm that she turned off, gather round, kids, it's an alarm that's at the house. That's not a cell phone alarm, okay? It's an alarm that is next to her bed, so I'm assuming Larissa has one and Bill has one, and they are either alarm clock radios, or I had friends that had I had one friend who set about 9 alarms because he knew he wasn't going to get up in the morning. So it was literally like a kitchen timer, like a big clock that had just like that you wound up, and then he also had the alarm clock radios and stuff. But so she's left this alarm at her house. She has to be at work, or like when she sets her alarm in the morning, unless she's a turd, she's not going to just be like, fuck it, I'm not coming home tonight. And Bill can just wake up when my alarm goes off and he'll just deal with it. You know, she's not going to leave that on, because it's not like you turn it off every day. Like it's just set to keep going. It's her normal routine.
Right.
And they're just like, she probably went to a friend's house, get over it.
Yeah.
No, she didn't. Just no, she didn't.
And nothing points to that at all. But you know how the police do sometimes, so. Not too long after, though, a missing persons case was opened. Larissa's minivan was dusted for fingerprints and checked for other forensic details, but nothing of value was found. Bill told detectives that she had recurring flat tires in the last 2 months, most of which had happened in the Morrell's parking lot. He said that twice they were punctured, and he checked them himself and found a cut in the valve stem, which was causing a slow leak. So the detectives were like, your explanation of these flat tires is pretty unconvincing. So we got our eyes on you. He was the primary suspect. Yeah. The detectives found another situation to be suspicious of with a coworker of Larissa's. So Larissa regularly rides to a Russian coworker who was also an immigrant back to the county jail after his work shift ended. He had lost his license after operating a vehicle while intoxicated and was on work release. While this lead was being looked into by an agent, thousands of other leads were being looked into as well. There were 3,600 people employed at Morell's who could possibly know something. That is a lot of people to go through.
Wow. Yeah.
The number was narrowed down to 100 people that could have actually come into contact with Larissa. 6 agents from the FBI were brought in to interview these employees. Unfortunately, nothing came from these interviews. They also found that the Russian coworker's alibi of working late and not finding Larissa in the parking lot and then taking a ride from someone else was absolutely rock solid. Bill's story about the tire also checked out after they spoke with the mechanic, saying that the tire valve stem would have had to have been tampered with. Bill was cleared as a suspect pretty early on in the investigation.
Sorry, when they say the number was narrowed down to 100 people that could have actually come into contact with Larissa that night, are they just assuming that's because 100 people worked that night? Like, that were there? Because anybody could have dropped by that worked there.
I mean, one would assume, yes. I don't know if that's it, or if it's like these 100 people actually knew Larissa, like they worked in her department or something. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, it's just not clear. They didn't mention it like in anything that I read. I read the book on this case. Like, they don't mention what the 100 was narrowed down.
How it was narrowed.
Like, based on what criteria.
Right.
Yeah. It's just interesting.
It is. An award of $8,000 was offered for information about Larissa in September of 1994 from Morell's and Professional Carpet Systems, where Bill was working. Friends and volunteers passed out flyers, and searches were done with people on foot and in helicopters, as well as with dogs. People who believed Larissa had been abducted formed an organization called Friends of Larissa. The group was made up of many people from Larissa's church, and they worked over Labor Day weekend to send out 4,000 letters with Larissa's photo and information. The group also canvassed the neighborhood on foot looking for Larissa or any information or clues. They printed 5,000 cards with Larissa's photo and distributed it to stores that sold hunting and fishing licenses, knowing that hunters coming for pheasant season would be in the fields. There were tons of searches done, and detectives were researching tips, but weeks, then months passed. But Bill kept everything in his house the way that Larissa had kept it. Like, obviously super, super hopeful that she was going to be found alive and she was going to come back and resume life as they knew it.
Yeah. Also, like, amazing friends, great community. I mean, they really jumped in there, but also how smart to, send stuff to the hunters and being like, just in case you find something. Like, that's one of those things that, like, you want to file in the back of your mind. And, like, I mean, obviously you never want anything like this to happen, but that's really smart.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Just like,
because you never know who's going to be out and about and see anything of importance, and for them to know, hey, there is a missing person in our area if you see anything.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really smart. All right, now we have to talk about Piper Streyle. She was born Piper Potts on February 11th, 1968 in Texas. She had 3 brothers and lived in Ohio until the family moved back to Texas before she started high school. Piper was the homecoming queen in Rio Medina, Texas. She played the clarinet, performed with the flag team, and was the statistician for the baseball and basketball teams. Stat girl.
Mm-hmm. Stat down. Love it.
I would be terrible at that. I'm like, I can never tell who has the ball, first of all.
I don't know.
It goes too fast.
Statistician, to me, because statistics, things like that, like, I would think that a lot of math has to go into that. And I was asked just 2 weeks ago, basically, by someone who was doing my taxes, and I love her. She was like, "Are you a math person?" And I was like, "I've done math. I don't, I mean..."
I've heard of it.
Yeah. I've been known to complete a math problem. But, yeah, I don't...
Sure.
Not my gig, man.
I wouldn't consider myself a math person. No.
But she seems super, super smart and super... I mean, both of these women, just exceptional.
Yes. Piper attended Canyon View Bible School and Seminary for college in Oregon, where she crossed paths with Vance Streyle. So Vance liked Piper's positive outlook on life, and he fell for her pretty quickly. Both Vance and Piper had goals of starting a church, working with children, and organizing a Bible camp where kids could have fun and learn about Christ. Two people just made for each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, usually it's like, you like pizza, I like pizza. You like blue, I like blue. Like, wow.
Puppies,
but this is like,
cute or no?
Church? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, they're like, you want to start a church? I want to start a church.
Right. And
you want to start a Bible camp for kids? I want to start a Bible camp for kids.
I know.
Like,
it's like Siegfried and Roy, man. They were, how do you find another lion tamer that is attracted to you? It's just insane. But
exactly.
I just want to say, side note, I've always loved the name Piper. I think it is so adorable. I just love it.
I do too.
And that's all
It's
I
really
have to
cute.
say about that.
Vance once said, I met this gal called Piper, and I thought to myself, that is some gal. That's the gal I want to marry. So there you have it. They fell in love. They were married 2 years later in 1989. Their daughter, Shayna, came along shortly after, and then 2 years later, their son, Nathan, was born. The couple then moved to South Dakota, where Vance's family was, to a 40-acre rural property west of Sioux Falls. The couple opened Prairie View Bible Camp on their property that was open during the summer months. And Piper was also employed at Southeastern Mental Health Outreach, SMHO, where she provided home care assistance to a mother and son who were both disabled. She was punctual, efficient, always on time.
I would think those would
Always.
be really, really, really important qualities for such an important job, like taking care of, providing home care to a mother and son who are both in need of that. You know, like, I don't think that you could just show up when you want to, obviously, but.
Yeah, it's just like, these things are, I don't know, like if I was late to something, that's not going to raise any alarm bells.
No.
In fact, if I'm on time,
that would raise more alarm bells.
You may be worried, yeah. But I'm just a poor manager of time. But for Piper, that's a really, really big red flag.
Well, I don't know if this is the reason, but I am a poor manager of time as well, but the opposite. Like, I'm way more likely to show up 25 minutes early to something because I just don't know what to do. And then yesterday I went to your house and I wasn't even late yet. And you were like, hey, you coming? I'm like, yeah. But maybe it's because I just,
See? It was out of your ordinary. Yeah. I got worried. I like when you check in. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that.
Well, I'm sorry. But I understand it. I see where I went wrong. I get it. We're going to talk about what happened to Piper now. On Friday, July 26th, 1996, there was a knock at the door of the Streyle home. Shayna, their 3.5-year-old daughter, wanted to answer the door, but Vance was worried that someone she didn't know would be there, so he went instead. At the door was a young man with a mustache, and he was of average height. Behind him in the driveway was a black SUV with black rims. And I think it's important to note, too, it wasn't the type of mustache that Torella has. I think it was a little bit thicker.
Okay,
yeah.
So not a peach fuzz,
No.
like... Okay.
No, yeah. It was a little bit thicker than that.
Good to know.
Yeah, I just want to paint a picture for you.
It actually matches my peach palette on my eyes here.
It's a
See why I did that? Matchy.
I love that. Just kidding.
Yeah.
The man was fidgeting. He was shuffling his feet. Vance introduced himself, and in return, the man said that his name was Robert Anderson, a name that you might have heard before. Yeah. He asked Vance about the camp, saying that he was interested in it for his young children. Vance told him that he would put him on their mailing list. Piper then comes up behind him and he hands Robert a pen and paper. He stared at her. He said nothing. Creep. But he wrote down his name and address and then he left. The couple didn't think much of what happened because it was a pretty regular occurrence for them. People would come up and ask about the camp. The following Monday, July 29th, Vance left for work in the morning while Piper was at home with the kids. Vance called Piper that morning, but she didn't answer, so he called back at noon. Still no answer. He did leave a message on the answering machine asking where she was and that if he didn't hear back from her, he would pick the kids up from the babysitter that afternoon. Piper was supposed to head to work later in the day, but she hadn't shown up on time, which again was not like her. The mother she looked after called SMHO and spoke with Piper's coworker, Patty Sinclair. Patty then called Piper's home, but the phone rang for quite some time before someone answered. Finally, Shayna, and remember she's 3.5, she answered the phone, and when she said hello, Patty asked if is your mommy or daddy home? She told Patty no, and then Patty asked if there was a babysitter there, and Shayna said no. She said, quote, "No, they are killed.
No.
A mean man carried mommy away," and then she hung up the phone.
Oh my gosh.
3.5. Patty called her back, and when Shayna picked up the phone, Patty asked when her mommy left, and she told her a while ago. She asked Shayna where she went, and she said, quote, "She went with a man in a black car." Patty asked her if she knew the man, and she said, quote, "No, I don't want mommy to die. I don't want daddy hurt. I don't want daddy to die." Patty then got the attention of a coworker and had them call 911. The dispatcher told the coworker to have Patty keep Shayna on the phone. Patty asked her what her name is, and she said, quote, "Shayna, my mommy is going to die." Then she hung up the phone. McCook County Sheriff Gene Taylor was dispatched to the Strayle's trailer located west of Sioux Falls near Canastota. He was not informed of the conversation between Patty's coworker and 911. He was just told to check on the welfare of a child. So he's walking up to the trailer, but he feels unsettled when he sees the bottom of 3 steps up to the door was knocked off, and the second step was broken and tilted at an awkward angle, and it looked like it had recently happened. The front door was open, and a hole was where the glass should have been in the front door. He called out a few times with no reply, but he did hear the voices of the children inside. He entered the home and immediately knew something was wrong. There was a chair, an ironing board, and other items tipped over in disarray, and there was a steak knife in the trash can by the front door. He also saw a purse with a checkbook, calculator, and bills surrounding it. He made his way to the hallway where he saw 3.5-year-old Shayna. She asked him if he knew where her mom was and told him that her mom was going to die. He asked her if she was in the hospital, and she said no. Shayna was crying, and then Nathan came out of the bedroom to be with his sister. Sheriff Taylor asked Shayna a few more questions, but she only cried more. He called for backup, and authorities of all kinds showed up to the house, including the Division of Criminal Investigation. Agent Jim Severson spoke gently with Shayna about what happened, and Shayna told him, quote, "A bad man in a black truck came. There was a loud noise, and mommy said to get Nathan and hide." Then the phone rang, and Sheriff Taylor answered it. The man on the other line asked who it was, and he said, quote, "This is McCook County Sheriff Gene Taylor. Who is this?" The man replied, quote, "Vance Streyle. I'm looking for my kids. Is something wrong?" Sheriff Taylor told him that the kids were safe, but he needed him to come home as soon as possible. Vance told him that he couldn't get a hold of Piper and assumed that the kids were at the babysitter's. Vance said that the babysitter told him that Piper had called at 9:30 that morning saying that she was going to bring the kids over in the afternoon. Police initially didn't allow Vance to speak with his children or go into the house because he was under suspicion. However, after some quick deliberations, they decided that since Shayna continually said that a bad man had taken her mommy, they finally let him go in with his kids. Shayna told Vance that a mean man took Nathan's tent, but that mommy said it was okay. The day prior was Nathan's birthday, and he had received a blue kids' tent that was set up in his bedroom.
So a roadblock was set up pretty quickly, and anybody driving by was stopped and questioned. One man driving a county road grader named Tommy Thiel was the first to have seen something. So he told the police that at about 9:30 a.m., he was headed south when a flat black SUV with black wheels and a CB antenna on the left front side came toward him heading north toward Lake Vermilion. And he said that the vehicle had gotten about 100 yards from the grader when it all of a sudden made a U-turn, goes down in the ditch, and then speeds back to the south, which is like,
suspicious.
What's the hurry, dude?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Donnie then drove the grader south a few miles until he hit the county line, and then he turned around heading north to blade the other side. The police asked if he saw the black SUV again, and he said that about an hour later, the same SUV came from the west, and it ran a stoplight in front of him, or a stop sign. Then again at noon, he saw it in an area across from the Strayles' home heading west. While this was going on, there were crime scene investigators and photographers at the Streyle home. They found that the blue kid's tent was missing and thought maybe the assailant took it to dispose of Piper's body. The outside of the house was also searched. They found a spent shell casing from a 9mm handgun, remember that, underneath Sheriff Taylor's car. Vance confirmed to police that he did not own any firearms. They took Piper's hairbrush for samples as well as blood-stained sanitary pads. Really getting in there. The police then began the search for Piper. Vance took the kids to stay with his parents, and after putting the kids to bed, Vance remembered his encounter with Robert Anderson the Friday before, and that his name and address were on a piece of paper in the home. So he had called the police, and he was told to come back and meet them at his house. Vance and the police started searching for the paper, and Vance remembered it being put in a desk drawer, but the paper wasn't there. He did remember, though, that the man's name was Robert Anderson because it was the same as his grandfather's. And he also remembered that Robert said that his father lived by Doc Schaefer's place in Lake Vermilion. Why are you giving so many details?
So, I've encountered a few people in my day where they're like, nice to meet you, here's my entire life story. And in the moment, I'm like, oh gosh, like this is kind of, I don't need to know all this information. But for something like this, I'm like, tell me everything. Give it all to, because then you can tell the police, like, hey, I know exactly where his daddy lives. And
Well, exactly. So, like, if you're gonna go back and do something nefarious, and you remove the piece of paper that has your name written on it, and you're like, I got it! Like, they'll never catch me now. Like, does Vance have amnesia? He fucking remembers you, dude.
I wonder, though, I don't know. I feel like in certain situations, I have been an awkward ape. Oxford ape arms.
Oxford arms.
Yes, that's what I've been in. That's a Drunk History quote. If you enjoy that show, it's hysterically funny. That's my favorite episode. But
yes.
But I've been super awkward, socially awkward in certain encounters, and then I'm like, oh gosh, like what did I say? But some people are just socially awkward, and so maybe it was like word vomit where stuff was pouring out. Because what I feel like is, and I don't think that you will disagree, and I think that Robert was not expecting Vance to be there when he showed up at the house. He was hoping that it was just Piper. So it threw him off.
Right.
And maybe he just was like, oh shit, I'm off my game. And he just is like talking and talking and talking and talking and,
Yeah, you would just think that you'd be like, all right, this is not going to happen now. He knows too much. Like, but he can't help himself. So here we are. I mean, obviously he shouldn't do this to anybody, but it's just like these things you would think, okay, that one's just not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
But instead, he's like, proceed. I don't see the problem here.
We'll sail without him.
Whatever. Of the many people that showed up to the Streyle home, one was the game warden, and he knew exactly that place, the place by Doc Schaefer's. He knows this man. So the police searched records of black SUVs with Robert's name and then his father's name that the game warden provided, which was Leland Robertson. The police then decided to call the parents home, and they speak with Ruth, that's Leland's wife, Robert's mother. And it was like very late. It was like middle of the night kind of thing. So they had to make up a reason why they're calling. And of course, she's like very friendly the whole time, So they tell her that they're looking for Robert, but of course they don't say we're the police, we're looking for him. They're like, we're trying to buy a car from him. And she's like, oh, isn't that nice? He's working the night shift at Morel's. He's not home right now.
You gotta be kidding me.
Morel's. So Robert was a fridge technician, and he worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So the next day, July the 30th, investigators call Morel's, and they get Robert's phone number and address. So they drove by his house looking for a black SUV, but there was not one there. They ran his name through the DMV and found that a Ford Bronco was registered to him. Boxy, flat SUV. They got the license plate number. They drive through the Morrell's parking lot in search of this Bronco. So they come up to a Bronco matching his license plate, except it's not black. It's blue. And it had a custom white and black weaved pattern on the sides.
That's got to be such a gut punch for the police, right? It's like,
yeah, you're like,
damn it.
Darn.
Oh, well.
Yeah. One agent stayed to watch the Bronco while they called Donnie, the grader driver, back. So Donnie met the detectives at Morrell's and said that if the blue Bronco in front of him was black, it would be the one he saw the day before. When a man came out and got in the Bronco, they tailed him. Some agents, detectives, were staking out Anderson's home, and some were making a photo lineup using his driver's license photo. So they show the lineup to Vance, but he couldn't ID anyone with certainty as the man from that Friday before. Then they separated the photos and showed them to Shayna, like you would with a deck of cards, but she couldn't pick him out either.
I understand.
So that's another gut punch.
Yeah. I understand, too, that at this point, police only have a photo that is available to them, which would have been the driver's license photo, right? But you don't have to get a new driver's license photo every year, let alone a couple months.
Exactly.
Because for some people, their appearance changes over the course of a couple months or...
Sure, yeah. Exactly. You would think they'd look at that and be like, okay, well, when was this picture? How old is this picture? Because, like, up until when I had to get my real ID, when I finally went a couple months ago and got it. So right now I have a new picture with, all of this. But
Ooh, la-ti-da.
The picture that I had before that was the same one I took when I was like 21 years old. And I just kept keeping the picture because I didn't want to retake my picture.
Yes. I wish I would have kept my old picture. I don't think that I could have done it now that I have my real ID. But they really zoom in on your face now. And I dislike it a lot.
Yeah. Although the last time I think the lady just... because she has the power to, took my picture on 2 and not 3.
Dude, that happened to me one time,
so
too.
I was like...
Yes. Yeah. Well, the woman... sorry, tangent. The woman that... It was a couple... I don't know. A couple renews ago or something. I can't remember exactly when. But she was like, okay, I'm going to count. 1, 2, 1, 2. So when she did the second 2, I was like... okay, wasn't expecting that. And that's the photo. And I think that's how...
Yeah, they don't let you redo it.
That's how they get through the days. Is just... I bet she's still laughing about it.
I bet she is.
Woo!
Yeah. I am.
Rude.
Yeah.
All right, so the investigation. At this point, they could not tie Anderson to kidnapping, so an agent from the DCI, Bob Grand Prix, began the process of conducting an elimination interview with him. Grand Prix went to Anderson's home, and he agreed with no question to come down to the station for questioning. He was interviewed by a few different agents and detectives and stated that his full name was Robert Leroy Anderson. When he asked if he knew why he was coming down to the station, he said he supposed that it was about the girl who went missing that he read about in the paper.
But why, even if he read about it in the paper, why would he have anything to do with it?
No reason.
Like, if somebody went missing, exactly, if somebody went missing here, I don't read the paper. Do they even do the paper?
Yes.
Anyway, I don't watch the news either. But anyway.
They do the paper.
Papers?
Yes. You can get...
They do. You said do.
I know.
If the police brought me down, first of all, I would pass out in my own vomit my own pass out. I would just die. But if I stayed alive, I certainly wouldn't be like, if they were like, why do we have you here? I'd be like, I most certainly do not know. Like, I wouldn't just be like, you know what? Somebody went missing a few days back. You're probably just asking everybody in the town about it.
Right. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, it's probably the missing person that's out there. But I'd probably be like, well, maybe you caught me speeding yesterday and you didn't want to arrest me right then. And
I'm sorry.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, my first he's giving himself away, kind of. I mean, he's definitely making himself a lot more suspicious, and the only thing that I have to say to Robert Leroy Anderson is, like, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be, but he is, can't help it. So anyway, they asked him if he had gone to the Streyle home on Friday, July 26th, and he said that he did, of course, not a big deal, no, it's nothing suspicious, he was just there to ask about the camp, right? They asked if he went by again on Monday, July 29th, and he said that he didn't. They asked if he was sure, and he said that he did stop back by yesterday around 11, but didn't see a vehicle. And so he pulled in because he remembered that 2 vehicles sitting there, they were there, so then he backs out. But he went by, he saw the 2 vehicles, then he goes back by, he doesn't see him anymore, so he pulls in and leaves, I guess. And the detective asked for more detail, and Anderson said that he stopped by 2 more times because he wanted to use their archery range, but nobody answered.
Okay. You mean to tell me that you show up at this person's house asking for information, which I understand at this time, again, they're not going to have a website you can go to register or whatever. And when they put him on their mailing list, they meant physical mailing list. This is 1996. So I get that, like, if you see something you want to get, I mean, there's no Facebook marketplace. Like, you have to physically go to their house and knock on the door and be like, I saw a sign out front. I would like to inquire about this, like whatever. So, all right, you stopped by the one time. The day she goes missing a couple days later. The day she goes missing, somebody with a vehicle that matches your vehicle,
albeit not the same color, but still.
And you say, no, I wasn't there. Well, I did stop by once.
Okay, it was actually 3 times.
And now that I'm thinking about it, I stopped by actually 2 more other times, but nobody was home, so it definitely wasn't me.
Yeah, I mean, again, he is being so suspicious, which, again, thank God for, because if, I have hopes that they would have caught him no matter what, but he's definitely making it a lot easier to be like, okay, red flag, like, you did something. Dummies, man, just goons being goons and just dummies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Anderson also admitted to making a U-turn, but didn't have an explanation as to why, and I can understand that. I make casual U-turns all the time. It's a hobby.
Yeah, and totally
of
speed
mine.
away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do that a lot.
Like at 90 miles an hour. Yeah. You're just like, no! And then you turn around.
I'm just born to burn rubber, Like, that's just what I do. So they asked him if he had washed or painted his Bronco recently, and he said, nope, never did that. Nope. The detectives thought it was pretty odd because it was very clean after he was on these gravel roads and he put himself there, but he said he had not washed it recently. They asked if he had ever used or owned a handgun, and he was like, absolutely not, never have. At this point in the interview, one agent left to go get affidavits for search warrants and to find a judge. During the interview, Anderson went off on tangents about his knowledge of black holes in space, the speed of light, the Roman Empire, and theories of physics. He compared his intelligence to that of Albert Einstein, claiming that he had developed his own theory of light. He also expressed boredom and even began doodling. Anderson mentioned that he was tired and that he knew they wouldn't let him leave, and the police told him, the door is open, man. And Anderson is like, to the Bronco? And they're like, no, the door is unlocked here.
That door!
Yeah, in the room that you're in right now, that door is unlocked. You can go if you want to.
Yeah, the one you'd have to walk through to leave here.
Oh, this door.
Dumb shit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mr. Albert Einstein.
Well, we were talking about the Bronco 25 minutes ago. It's like, if you want me to keep up,
If you're going to change the subject, let someone know.
Exactly. Then detectives switched tactics and asked him if he knew Larissa Dumansky. He said that he did and that he had worked with her. Then a detective came in and took photos of Anderson. The detective and Anderson went back and forth about why the photo was taken. The detective was trying to get Anderson to admit that he was there by saying Shayna could identify him. He continued to deny it, but realized that this did not look good for him. The police thought that Piper might still be alive, so they needed to keep Anderson talking because as it stood, he was not under arrest and he was technically free to go, even though he doesn't know which door is unlocked. Anything that he said after he first asked to leave would not be admissible in court, so any confession he made now could not be used, but it was their priority to keep him talking in order to get clues about Piper. Anderson said that he would drive around in the mornings and would often see Piper getting the mail. The police asked him what he thought someone would do to her if they kidnapped her, and his response was, quote, "I've heard that when a woman is abducted, she is tied up and raped. Sometimes she's kept as a sex slave." And then he spoke about sex for about 2 hours.
Ew. Like, listen, dude. You guys, and you're not even ready for how often this man talks about his nasty sexual fantasies. But, like, in what world do you think the cops want to know about that? But, like, he can't stop talking about it.
I feel like in this situation, they probably... it might be helpful for him to talk at length about his sexual fantasies, but
it's just weird.
Consenting adults, get your freak on. I love Ludacris's "What's Your Fantasy?" Like, I get it, you know? But yeah, I couldn't talk for 10 minutes about something like that, let alone 2 hours.
No. And it is absolutely nobody that I'm aware of's fantasy to be abducted from her home in front of her children, tied up and raped and kept as a sex slave.
I mean, I've never met this person, so I can't see it, but...
Exactly.
After Anderson's long monologue about sex, he again said that he wanted to leave, and the detectives were like, dude, you can leave anytime you want to. Like, we already done told you that. But they were like, you might want to hear what we just learned. He asked them what they knew, and they told him that they had reason to believe that Piper was still alive. Unfortunately, it was a tactic that did not work to get them an answer, and he again asked to leave. The police took a break, and one decided that the interview was done unless they Mirandaized him, meaning that he couldn't leave, but he wasn't under arrest. They decided then to bait him into staying longer because if they Mirandaized him, he could stop talking and or get a lawyer. So they told him, you can go, Robert, but we have a question. We're hearing you may have knowledge about Piper's whereabouts. Can you help us out with that? Anderson said that he could not, but he kept talking about black holes and his knowledge of engineering, like anybody gives a shit. The police requested that he take a polygraph test, and he refused because he didn't consider it a reliable test. Might be the one and only thing that I agree with him about. Anderson was held for 8 hours, and when he was finally released, they told him that he couldn't go back home or in his Bronco because of the search warrants they had obtained. Anderson told them that he was innocent and was just wanting information on the Bible camp. He was required to give police his clothes and the fanny pack that he was wearing. Inside of the fanny pack,
90s.
This, I know, right? I'm like, tell me we're in the 90s without telling me we're in the 90s. And it's like, oh, okay, hand over your fanny pack.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's not wearing it in such a way that would be, because fanny packs are back in. I don't know if they're as in as they once, a couple years ago or maybe a year ago, they were like super, super in, but still. And to look at this guy, no offense, I don't know. It's like, oh, you can't pull off a fanny pack. But anyway.
Absolutely not.
Inside of the fanny pack, they found 2 handcuff keys. They also took blood, hair, and fingernail samples, and during his strip search, it was found that he was wearing no underwear, which is a detail that will make a difference a little bit later, so put a pin in the commando situation.
Mm-hmm.
During Anderson's interview, he also insisted that he had never owned a gun. The police questioned several coworkers of his, and there were 2 that said otherwise. Richard Fry said that he had taken Anderson pheasant hunting with him, and while Richard hunted, Anderson stayed at the shooting range shooting his 9mm pistol.
Excuse me?
Mm-hmm. Richard said that Anderson pointed out a valley that he said would be a good place to bury a body. Why? Why is this? Why?
Yeah, and after that, Richard was like, we're not friends anymore, I'm busy. I think my mom's calling. Bye.
I have to wash my hair tonight. I can't hang out.
Yeah.
Another coworker stated that he shot firearms with Anderson at a public range where Anderson used his 9mm handgun. The coworker then led the police to the range where they collected spent shells. The ballistics matched on 11 of the 12 found at the range to the one found in the Strayle's driveway. Done.
Oopsie.
Gotcha.
If he had not stopped there a few days before and given his name to Piper's husband, they would not be onto him right now.
But
they might later, because he does work at Morel's and all the stuff, but
thank God for dumb people.
Thank God. So the search of Anderson's Bronco turned up a lot of interesting items. There were bags, trash, boxes, tools, and receipts. There were 2 receipts of interest initially, one for a CB antenna and one for the installation of the antenna. They also found a receipt for Ace Hardware from July 25th, 1996 for brown jersey gloves, 2 household sprayers, and a 3-inch paintbrush. And there was another receipt from the same day from a different store for a hand sprayer, a skein of red yarn, a skein.
It's skein.
A skein. Okay.
It's like a bunch of yarn. You know, like when you buy those, like when you go to the store and it's like a roll. They call them. It's a skein. So like one bunch or one roll is a skein.
Cool. I didn't know that. But it's red yarn and a compact disc, CD, if you will. Yet another receipt from that day, yet another store, was for a 16-ounce bottle of $3.93 craft paint. And all of these purchases were made before Anderson's Friday trip to the Streyle home. There was also a fast food receipt taped to a bag from July 26th with black paint on it. There was a receipt from Menards, which is like a Kroger for us, I think.
No, it's not. It's like a Lowe's or a Home Depot.
Oh no, it's like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. You're right. So he had gone to Menards. He bought duct tape, a 3-inch brush, and a 5-quart bucket. The police went to Menards and spoke with the cashier and showed a photo, but they did not recognize Anderson. However, a few weeks later, the Menards store manager called the police and said that Anderson's check from July 29th had bounced. I'm sorry. So he wrote a check with his damn name on it.
I was gonna say he never claimed to be smart, but that's entirely untrue. He actually claimed to be a genius.
The smartest. Yeah. So like, if the police come to you and say, do you recognize this man? We think he made a purchase here on this date. And you're like, never seen him in my life. I don't recognize him. I don't know. But he wrote a check. So I get if you went through like credit card receipts and checks and there was nobody by that name there, you'd be like, nah, I don't know. But he did write a check. So why didn't we check that before we waited a few weeks for it to bounce?
Darla, I wish I could tell you, just don't know.
I know. If I was the police, I'd be like, you didn't fucking check that when I asked you.
Oh, guess what? You're arrested now.
Yeah, exactly. Idiots. You're arrested for being an idiot. There were 2 toolboxes found in the Bronco. One contained the typical tools you'd expect to find, but the other contained items that the agents felt were for sinister purposes and referred to it as the torture kit. The toolbox contained black and red spray paint, a 5-inch tear gas container, nylon straps, 9 feet of chain, an X-Acto knife, eye bolts, small pieces of unknown plants, and several 1/4-inch wooden dowels cut into 9-inch pieces. The police found that the back seats of the Bronco had been removed and replaced with a large carpeted platform with eye rings in the corners, and it was fitted to the back of the SUV. It was described as looking like a bondage board. And when I read this book, listened to it, of course, because can't read, this narrator said bondage board like 50 times, like it was something that I was supposed to know what it was. And I was like, meh. So I Googled it, and you can buy them things anywhere, pretty much. I mean, obviously, 99.9% of people are not using them for torture and murder. But I had just not heard of such. But apparently, they're a pretty big thing, and you can get them anywhere. So that in and of itself would not be like, it's not illegal to get down on that.
I would think, though, if you're going to get down on something like that, and there's no judgment on my end, do whatever you want to do. You'd have to have a lot of trust in your partner if you were going to be the one who was strapped to the board, I would think.
And I would also think that you don't need an X-Acto knife and chains and stuff.
X-Acto knife, I would not think so.
Together,
No.
Not good.
A tear
Not
gas
good.
container? Yeah. Like, what is that for? Come on.
Yeah. They found 4 hairs, which they removed from the board for testing, and the state lab also found a piece of black and white cotton cloth on the board. On the exterior of the Bronco, they found drips of black paint along the white tire rims and more black paint under the hood, with splotches and brushed paint on pieces of metal. After extensive searches of the Bronco, they sent it to the state crime lab. During the search of his home and vehicle, the police put Anderson, as well as his wife and kids, in a hotel. These poor people.
I'm so glad that he's got a wife and children. And
oh my gosh. I know. There were also several things taken from the home, including clothes and vacuum bags. The backyard shed on the property was also searched. They found brown jersey gloves with the tag still on, black spray paint, primer spray paint, and an almost complete roll of duct tape. They also found a 1.5 inch by 5 inch piece of stainless steel with a 1.5 inch triangle welded on one end that was spray painted gray. And it was later determined that this and the bondage board were made at his workplace. Detectives also went to the Ben Franklin store where Anderson had purchased the paint and asked the employee working if the type of paint bought would wash off a vehicle. And he said, "That is so weird. That's the second time," that's the second time that I've been asked that today. In my brain, it was actual Ben Franklin working here. I literally was picturing Ben Franklin.
Right.
Wow.
With his spectacles.
But she was like, exactly. But she was like, nobody's ever asked me that before. If this paint is going to be washed off a vehicle, and this is the second time somebody's asked me just this week. And so they were like, "Who asked you the first time?" And so they show her a picture, and she IDs Robert Anderson as the person who asked the first time. And she said the paint would, in fact, wash off of a vehicle.
Let's talk about Robert Leroy Anderson. He was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in 1968 into what was described to be a dysfunctional family. He had 2 brothers and a younger sister. Anderson qualified for the Gifted and Talented program in high school. He had a self-centered nature and a tendency toward unlawful behavior. Much like his father and brothers, his brother Billy served time in prison for manslaughter, and his brother Lee Ivor attempted to kill his boss and his fiancée and was sentenced to life in prison. At one point, all of the Anderson men were in prison together.
Wow. And his brother tried to kill them just because he was going to try and rob them. But they were home, and so he was like, that's it. I don't even think he was trying to rob that much.
In high school, Anderson's best friend Glenn Walker was moving to Kansas City with his family, and Anderson decided to just go right along with him. This was at the beginning of his junior year, and he ended up dropping out, but he did get his GED. He worked odd jobs and started college, and he would tell people about his fantasies about women. Glenn said that it began in middle school when Anderson first talked about kidnapping a woman.
Red flag, red flag. This is a case where, I don't know, just anyone listening, if your friend starts talking about anything like this, please don't write it off as just boy talk.
No.
Or man talk.
No. That's because it's illegal, and it's a violent crime. It's just In adulthood, his fantasies got darker, and he decided that he would need a partner to carry out his plans. He set his sights on one of his longtime friends, Jamie Hammer. Anderson and Hammer had known each other since childhood, and Anderson was very open about his plans. He asked Hammer if he wanted to help him, saying that they could both rape the woman. At one point,
Hey, you gotta incentivize, right?
I mean, there's something in it for you. You can. At one point, he brought walkie-talkies to Hammer and said that they would use a tire popper on the road and then park just down the way, and after a woman hit the popper, one man would drive up and pretend to help, but would instead pull her into their car. Hammer agreed to do a test run with him, but when Anderson drove him past the home of the woman he planned to abduct, he ultimately said no to helping him. How sweet.
Yeah, and then he turned him into police and nothing bad ever happened.
That's what should have happened, but what ended up happening is that Hammer didn't do anything, and then here we are.
Boys will be
right?
boys. This is just guy talk.
You do whatever makes you happy, even if that's murdering innocent people. I'm just not going to participate in it, and that's my job here is done. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. All right, dude.
Come on.
And guys, that's where we're gonna put a little pin in her.
Yep. In the next episode, we're gonna finish up the investigation. We're gonna find out what actually happened to Piper and Larissa. And we're gonna talk about his trial and things. So be sure to tune in next time. We love you.
Yes, we do.
And we'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Bye.